Hey guys.
Hey everybody.
So today we're going to be talking about mentorship. This past weekend we went to the student conclave in North Carolina, and that was the most common question we got asked by the students there. They were considering traveling after graduation. Most of them wanted to know, like, what can they expect as far as mentorship. Is it a good idea to travel after graduation because they've heard bad things about not having any mentorship as a traveler. So that's something we want to address today. We started traveling as new grads, so we definitely have some experience there. I'm going to go ahead and share this video in a couple groups and try to get some people in here. Whitney will talk about us a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. So I just want to give a quick introduction for anybody who's not familiar with us. So my name is Whitney Aiken and this is Jared Kazaza. We are both doctors of physical therapy. We graduated in 2015. We are Virginia natives and we have been traveling physical therapists. We've been traveling as a pair since right after graduation. So we started right away as new grads, fresh out being traveling therapists, and we have been traveling therapists for almost 4 years now. So our whole career so far as physical therapists have been as travelers. So we definitely understand the concern about whether or not mentorship is available. So for you guys that are tuning in that are students that are thinking about traveling therapy when you graduate, or those of you that are recent graduates, we definitely understand we were in your place just a few years ago. And that's a big question we hear all the time. Is mentorship available? Can you get any kind of mentorship coming out fresh out of school as a new grad? Whether that's a physical therapist assistant, an OT, an occupational therapist assistant, or an SLP. A lot of students want to know, is it the right decision for me to go into traveling therapy right after graduation because I'm worried as a new clinician, will I get mentorship? So that's something we wanted to address today. As Jared mentioned, we also had the opportunity to go to the North Carolina Physical Therapy Student Conclave this weekend. So a huge shout out to Elon University for hosting the North Carolina Student Conclave. It was a great event. And a big shout out to the North Carolina Student SIG, or the Student Interest Group, Special Interest Group, for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to come out and talk to some students. We talked to first years, second years, third years, both PTA and DPT students. So that was a lot of fun because they still have so much to learn as far as just becoming a physical therapist or physical therapist assistants, and so there's a lot to think about. You're learning all these different subjects. You're trying to decide what type of therapist you're going to be. Do I like acute better? Do I like outpatient? And then what's my career path going to look like? What's my 5-year plan? When I come out of school, am I going to get a permanent job right away? Am I going to try to go temp to perm, or am I going to give this whole world of traveling therapy a shot? So that was cool to get to talk to some of them and then just show them what are the different opportunities in their career paths that they can take.
Yeah, it was really exciting. It reminded me talking to some of those students when I first heard about travel therapy and got all excited about it, and that was actually my first year as well, so a lot of them had the same kind of reaction that I had, where they're really excited and think it sounds great, and it was cool.
Yeah, and so some people are just coming at us of, I have no idea what traveling therapy is. What is it? What can I expect? So we were there to answer some of those questions, and it was a lot of fun. We've been spending a lot of our traveling career actually in North Carolina. We're from Virginia, but we've spent a lot of time in North Carolina, and we love it down there. So thanks again to Elon University for hosting, and the Student Interest Group for having us. Elon is such a beautiful campus. It was great to be down there this weekend. So I see that a few of you guys are signing on as Jared's getting this shared and up in a couple of groups. If you guys would just say hey below and let us know who you are. Tell us your name. Tell us if you're a student. If you are a student, tell us what year you are. Tell us if you're a current clinician. Are you a recent graduate, or are you, maybe a few years out in your career? I see that our friend Josh is tuning in, and Josh is an experienced clinician who's working on a fellowship. And then I see that Isha has signed in as well, and maybe a couple others of you guys. So say hey below and let us know who you are. So yeah, let's get right into talking about some mentorship opportunities and what's available as a travel therapist.
So first, we want to talk about mentorship as far as us being what we're trying to do as mentors to new travelers along their way, like along the path. So for us starting out, I did a lot of research. So anybody that reads any of my articles, especially my articles about finance, know that I like to research things. I like to be really thorough on things. So when we were thinking about traveling, I did a ton of research, and the information out there was extremely limited. And so as soon as we started traveling, I got a little bit of experience. I wanted to help other people that were going to be following along behind me. So that was back when we started the Fifth Wheel PT blog, and I started writing one of my very first articles was about traveling as a new grad. And the reason for that is because the information was limited. Now there's a lot more information, which is great. So we want to provide as much information to help new people get started as we can. And we got a little bit taken advantage of when we started just because we didn't know enough, and we don't want other people to have to go through that same process. So the purpose of this website, this Facebook page, all that is to help new travelers not get taken advantage of, which is
right. So that's just
mainly our goal.
Yeah, so that's just one form of mentorship. We're going to talk a lot about clinical mentorship, but as far as our site, we started a personal blog back a couple years ago, and many of you might be familiar with our blog, but some of you may not. So we have a personal website. It's called Fifth Wheel Physical Therapist, and on there we started just sort of talking about our own journey. We were new traveling physical therapists. We were exploring different cities, different states, going on lots of fun weekend trips. So we started our blog just with the intention of just sharing our story and writing a few articles here and there, like what is travel therapy. Jared likes to write about finance and student loans and that kind of stuff. But then here just 6 months ago, we decided to branch off from our personal blog and start our new site, which many of you may also be familiar with, Travel Therapy Mentor. So the mentorship that we mostly provide is the ins and outs, the how-to of travel therapy. So we support students and new grads and even experienced clinicians who are considering going into travel therapy, just understanding how do I get started, what is the pay like, that kind of stuff. So we provide that type of mentorship. We have also been able to provide a little bit of clinical mentorship, especially because we are physical therapists, doctors of physical therapy. We feel most comfortable providing clinical guidance to other physical therapists, but we have provided some clinical mentorship and guidance as far as just billing and ethics and that sort of thing to other disciplines, OTs and speech therapists that have reached out to us.
Yeah, but that's not the mentorship that most people are asking about. They're asking about clinical mentorship, which is an understandable concern, and it's something that we are worried about as well.
Right. So we definitely want to talk about the different opportunities that you have as either a new grad or even an experienced clinician, just getting some mentorship when you're out in the world, but especially for those new grads out there. So there are definitely some ways to get clinical mentorship when you are on a travel assignment. So never fear, it is possible. So let's talk about the first way that you as a therapist, especially a newer therapist, can get mentorship if you jump into a travel job right after graduation. So the biggest thing is finding mentorship in the facility.
Yeah, and that's what most people are asking about, is there facilities that will mentor a new grad? And the answer to that, and like I told everybody this weekend, it's on a case-by-case basis. So each travel job is going to be different. The recruiter, the company can't really affect what the actual facility is like. They get the contract, they're trying to get someone to fill it. But as far as like making sure the facility is good for a new grad, they can try to do a little bit of that, but it's really on you as a new grad or you as a potential new traveler to talk to the manager at the facility and make sure that it's going to be a good situation for you. So, for example, my first contract, I had a lot of mentorship, more than I think anybody that I've ever talked to as a traveler. I don't think I really saw a patient there for over a week. I was just shadowing, learning about acute care. I had no experience in acute care. And it was a wonderful thing for me. I really enjoyed that. Whitney, on the other hand, did not have very much mentorship. So, and the difference there was that in my interview, I said, I'm not really comfortable with acute care. I'll only take this job if you guys are willing to help me out. And Whitney went into a skilled nursing, and she had some skilled nursing experience, so she didn't necessarily say those things. So it is available, and it's on a case-by-case basis from facility to facility. So when you're interviewing for jobs as a new grad, make sure that you ask those questions. Right. Tell them, you don't want to sound completely not confident at all, because you don't want them to be worried about if you can handle a caseload. But just say things like, this is gonna be my first job. I'm a little bit nervous. Is there any, what's the orientation process gonna be like? Is there gonna be a ramp up period? Those are the kind of questions that you have to ask the facility to make sure there'll be something like that available. And the other thing is, ask about the other staff there, because if you're the only one in the facility, no, you're not getting any mentorship. If you're the only PT there, there's no way. But if it's a facility of a lot of experienced clinicians, and they say things like, oh yeah, we have students all the time, they can help you out, those are good things to look for.
Absolutely. So the big take home point here is if you are a new grad or a student who's thinking about going into travel therapy as a new grad, and you feel like you're going to want some support, some mentorship in your first couple jobs, it's very important that you're very picky on your first couple placements. So there are travel jobs where it's going to be very busy, and you're going to be thrown in and you're going to be expected to hit the ground running. Now, there are jobs like Jared's where there will be more of a ramp up time. There will be more support. There will be more staff there to help you. So it's very important that your first couple assignments, your first couple travel therapy placements out of school are going to be supportive of you.
Yeah, so and that's a very good point. Make sure that you're picky, and I tell people that all the time. Make sure that the first assignment fits you well.
Absolutely.
Usually the setting that you're most comfortable in, because it's going to be your very first job. So you don't want to go into a setting like I did. It was kind of dumb. You don't want to go into a setting where you're not comfortable at all, because then you not only have to get used to being an independent therapist, but also a new setting at the same time. So that's very difficult. Instead, go into the setting you're most comfortable with. Make sure they offer, some sort of orientation. There's other therapists there. Ask about mentorship opportunities. Those kind of things are
Right.
really important.
So the other key point to that is making sure that you have a good recruiter that's going to understand your needs as a clinician. So you want to have a good recruiter that you mesh well with, that understands, yeah, you are a new grad, and even though you have the title, you have the license, you do need a little bit of ramp up period, or you do need a little bit of mentorship, or you're going to at least at bare minimum need someone else at your first job that is of the same discipline as you. So another PT, another OT, another SLP.
And in reality, this doesn't just apply to new grads, because there are a lot of experienced therapists that want to try a new setting. I did that. I didn't have any experience in skilled nursing, and I took an assignment in skilled nursing. So I would not have done that if I was just going to be thrown right in. So mentorship doesn't just apply to new grads sometimes.
Yeah.
It can apply to just changing settings.
Yep.
And a lot of travelers want to try new settings. That's a big appeal of travel, is that you can try different areas. So
Absolutely. So just the take-home point from that is make sure that when you are coming out of school, especially, or even if you're a new traveler that just wants to start traveling, make sure you have a good recruiter that understands your position and what you want, and they're not just trying to sell you on a job because they need to fill that job. So make sure that you have a good recruiter. If you guys are interested in any of the recruiters that we work with that have good mentorship programs, and we're going to talk more about what that might mean, or just good recruiters that we like and we trust, please feel free to reach out to us and send us a message, and we'd be happy to shoot you an email or a message back with the recruiters that we trust, especially with new grads and people who want a little bit more mentorship.
Or you can just comment mentor, and we'll send you some.
Yeah, #mentor below if you're interested. Okay, so another way that we want to talk about that you can receive mentorship by working with different travel therapy companies is there are some companies that have that will advertise that they have a mentorship program, and that can come in a couple different forms. So one form is, like I talked about just a minute ago, just your recruiter understanding your situation and placing you in what we might call like a new grad friendly facility, somewhere that is going to be conducive to hosting a new grad. The second thing would be that they might have a mentor available by phone. Sometimes this mentor could be another travel therapist of your same discipline that has agreed to take phone calls and kind of be on call to support newer graduates that might need to just get on the phone with another PT and say, hey, I'm not used to this, like, can you help me? What's your experience been like this? Sometimes it's nice to have that unbiased person that's not in your facility to talk to on the phone. So a lot of clinics or a lot of travel therapy companies will offer that type of mentorship.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll have questions about clinical things, which is great, and you might want to talk to somebody about that, and you might be able to talk to someone at the facility about that. But you also might have questions about like billing or ethics or things like that that might apply to the facility that you're at. So you don't want to ask a therapist that's already working there, right? Because that would be kind of weird. So you might want to have an unbiased person that you can call and ask them, like, hey, they're telling me to do this as far as billing, is that right? That's a really nice thing to have.
Absolutely. So the other way some of these travel therapy companies might have a clinical mentor by phone, a couple companies that we work with, they call this person the clinical liaison. And this person is actually not a travel therapist. They're actually just a clinician that is on staff with them. And it's usually more of like a seasoned clinician, like someone who's been in the field for 20, 30 years. We have, with a couple different contracts, spoken with this person with our travel company, the clinical liaison, and it was with things like productivity and billing and ethics and that kind of stuff again. So that's another way that you can get mentorship by phone through your travel company. And these are all just questions that you need to ask when you're working with a recruiter. What type of mentorship opportunities does your company provide me that's going to support me and help me get started on the best foot possible as a travel therapist, as a new grad?
Yep.
So another way, kind of outside of actual programs that are provided by travel therapy companies.
Good thing that we've done is reach out to past professors and past CIs. So we've had situations with, like, this is usually more clinical, but it can also be ethical or whatever. But people that you had a good relationship with in school or at a clinical that you were at, reach out to them and ask questions. And usually, if they are a teacher or a CI, then most of the time they want to help.
Absolutely.
And we found that those people are very helpful to us and are willing to provide any kind of assistance they can. They'll usually talk to you on the phone and help you out. So that's a very good source of mentorship.
Absolutely. And I've definitely reached out to past CIs and professors, especially with like tough clinical cases. So say I had a diagnosis that I wasn't quite sure about, and I wanted to reach out. Like just recently I had a vestibular patient, an outpatient, and I hadn't had one in a long time because just moving around as a travel therapist, maybe I just didn't happen to get one on my caseload for a while, and I have a CI that was really knowledgeable in that area, and so I reached back into that, reached back there and asked her for some help. And we've done it in other cases too. I think I reached out to a professor about kind of a unique case, and I said, hey, I remember back in school you presented a case study on this type of thing. What do you think? And they're always willing to help.
Yep.
Which is really great. And we actually just recently, I spoke with a colleague of ours who is in his fellowship. He's done residency and he's in his fellowship, and he mentioned that in the future he might be willing to be kind of a one-on-one mentor by phone. So stay tuned on that. But there's definitely a lot of people out there that are willing to help. You just have to know who to ask and reach out to people, and don't be afraid. I mean, in our professions as therapists, we love to help each other. We love to help our clients. We love to help each other. There's a lot of people out there. So some of these ways that you can think of as a permanent therapist finding mentorship, you can also, as a travel therapist, reach out to these resources.
Yep. Another thing that's not as another area that you can get help from that's not as traditional is from your classmates. So Whitney and I, when we started traveling, I can't tell you, and even now, I can't tell you how many times we came home and we talk about patients to each other, and just be like, I'm not really sure what to do. What would you do? And those kind of things of just like bouncing ideas off
Absolutely.
each other. They might be the same amount along in their profession as you are, but they have different experiences with their clinicals and things, and they've learned different things on their own. And just bouncing ideas off of each other has been really helpful to us. So reaching out to classmates, former classmates, and co-workers and things like that can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Bouncing ideas off each other is a great thing, and maybe he might suggest something that would trigger my memory to go look something up or that sort of thing. Another thing, kind of going back to that North Carolina Student Conclave where we were at this weekend, there was a great professional physical therapist who was in with her first year of practice, clinical practice, and she was a member of the Young Professional, I believe is what it's called, Student Interest Group. And she was talking about some ways to build yourself up in your first couple of years as a practitioner and ways to find mentorship. And I think that Young Professional Student Interest Group was a really great resource for students and young professionals when you get out to reach out to your national or your state organizations for support and for help. There's a lot of ways to get mentorship out there that aren't just in your facility.
Yes.
I think is a very important theme here.
Yep. Another thing that we have gotten a lot of value from starting out traveling as new grads was Facebook groups. It might sound crazy, but if you have a question about a patient, a clinical question, or even a question about ethics or anything like that, a lot of these Facebook groups are huge with tons of clinicians in there, and you can ask those questions and get a ton of different responses. And most of the time, same thing. People are very helpful. We're really lucky with our profession to have a lot of caring, giving people. So, some of those answers you have to take with a grain of salt, but sometimes you can get really valuable information. And another thing is blogs. So there's some awesome blogs from really smart therapists out there that I've learned I bet I've learned more reading blogs and articles written by other people than I did in school. It's really important.
maybe not.
No, I
think
so.
you learned the foundation of what you need to learn in school.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you can hone your clinical skills. We were just talking about, for example, we really love outpatient. And in school, especially as a physical therapist, and you occupational therapists and speech therapists might be able to relate to this in your own terms, but for physical therapists, you have to learn all these different areas. You have to be a generalist. You have to learn all about lymphedema, to acute care, to working with geriatrics, to working with pediatrics,
wounds, neuro,
wounds, everything. But then if you want to specialize or be more of like an outpatient therapist or that sort of thing, there's just not enough time. They would have to have us go to school for 2 more years to learn so much about one area, which is more of like what a residency is. But we have gone out of our way to learn more about orthopedics beyond just the classroom, through blogs, through podcasts, through networking with others. So there's a lot of other ways to learn things clinically.
For example, the example I gave today was I've learned so much more about treating healthy, active population on my own, reading things that other smarter therapists than me write about than I ever did in school. Like I didn't learn anything about proper deadlift form or proper squat form or how to do a snatch or anything like that in school. And we see a lot of patients in the clinic, especially working near colleges where there's a lot of active younger students, that they do these things, and you need to have some background knowledge on that. So you can read and learn a ton that you did not learn at all in school. Right,
and then of course continuing education is a great thing.
Yeah.
But this is sort of getting off on a tangent about just furthering your education and continuing to learn outside the classroom when you're actually out in the field working.
Yeah.
So, a few online resources. We talked about podcast blogs. There are some specific online mentor programs for different fields, like if you want to be an orthopedic sports med type physical therapist, or you want to be, a lymphedema, whatever. There are mentor programs online that you can find for that sort of thing. And that would go the same, like I said, whether you're a travel therapist or you're a permanent therapist. So the other thing I just wanted to talk to you, and we've kind of alluded to a lot here, is the overall theme here is that people feel like you're just going to be out there on your own. They feel like as a travel therapist, you're not going to grow, you're not going to learn, you're not going to have this mentorship that exists in permanent jobs. But we really feel like that's kind of a myth, because there's only a very selective few jobs out there that even as a new grad coming into a permanent position where they're going to have a tailored mentor program for you. There might be jobs where they might be more willing to spend a little more time training you or ramping up your caseload in a permanent setting than a travel setting. That's true. But I will say, in talking to so many people that take perm jobs, you don't always get mentorship. You might be in the clinic with 1-2 other people of your same profession, or you might be in a clinic as a permanent therapist as the only one. But even if you are in that clinic with 1 or 2 other professionals, does that mean they're mentoring you? Maybe not. Maybe they're just focused on their own caseload. Yeah. Maybe the only thing they can mentor you on is the 1 or 2 continuing edge courses they take each year. Or maybe they're an older therapist who's not really keeping up to date on the current research. So are you really getting mentorship in a permanent position? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, and we've seen I've talked to plenty of classmates and new grads that took jobs at permanent clinics that said they offered mentorship, but what that meant was that there was another therapist in the clinic that would help you if you needed it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what a travel job is. I mean, every travel job I think I've ever been to, there's other therapists there that are willing to help if I needed help. So
right.
It depends on what the permanent job means by mentorship.
Right, because I if you really think about it, all the travel jobs we're going into are permanent jobs too. All the people there are permanent employees. We could just as well have taken the job as a permanent job and then been there till infinity, and the same type of mentorship type of thing. So it really just comes down to you working closely with your recruiter for these placements, doing the phone interview with the facility, finding out what the facility is like, and finding out, are there going to be mentors there? Am I going to be supported in this environment, or am I just a warm body that's expected to be there and see 20 patients a day and get out the door and clock out? You need to just feel that out for yourself and know your comfort level and whether or not you're going to be able to seek out these mentorship opportunities that your same classmates who took perm jobs are going to have to seek out on their own as well.
Yeah, and something to mention here, an advantage of travel therapy, in my opinion, is that I got mentorship for a couple weeks right away. But on top of that, we've moved around to probably 8 to 10 different facilities now, somewhere around there. We've moved to a lot of different facilities, and each of those facilities have therapists there that I work closely beside, watch them treat patients. We have conversations at lunch. We have conversations, while patients are there, talk about different things, exercises, techniques. So I've gotten to learn from so many different therapists. versus if I had taken a permanent job, I don't know what I would have done, but it's hard to go back and say that. But I don't think that I've gotten nearly as much exposure to different ideas, different treatment techniques, all the things that I've learned along the way.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a big advantage of travel.
To be honest, we've grown and evolved as clinicians very well because of being travel therapists. Some people will, deter you from doing travel therapy because they think that you're just going to be stuck just, doing the job, checking the box and then getting out of there. But you're still treating patients, you're still learning and you're growing. We've learned from PTs of various backgrounds, different schools, different education levels. We've worked with PTs that have been in the field for 30 years. We've worked with PTs that have been in the field 10 years. We've worked with ones younger than us now. At the clinic I'm at right now, I'm one of the more seasoned therapists. Actually, I have coworkers that are younger in the field than I am. My DOR is older in the field than I am. I learn things from them daily. I learned things from maybe my peer or my coworker in the clinic went to a different PT school and they learned something differently. Like I had a TMJ patient on my schedule and I was like, oh my gosh, I never have seen TMJ. And immediately 3 of my coworkers who are younger than me, who just got out of school, were like, oh, I have a great PowerPoint that we learned about that a year ago in school. I'd be happy to email it to you. Oh, I have an opening after this. Do you want to practice on me? They really immediately lifted me up and supported me, and they were actually younger than I was, which was awesome. We've been to acute. Jared learned wound care from a PTA, an awesome PTA that had been doing wound care for 10 years. He learned wound care. We would have never learned wound care if we hadn't taken that job. We've learned skilled nursing. We learned home health. So there's been a lot of mentorship in different forms of what you would necessarily think it was.
Yeah, much different than a permanent job. If I had taken a job in outpatient ortho, I would not have nearly the perspective that I have on everything by trying different settings, learning from different PTs. Another thing to mention, I mentioned this in videos in the past, is that not only was I exposed to ideas that I liked, as far as like I agreed with what they were saying with their treatment techniques and their manual therapy ideas or whatever, but I was also have been exposed to a lot of things that I didn't like. And I think that's valuable to learn how you don't want to practice and how you don't want to become complacent or, how some PTs after a long time, they get to where they're kind of like stuck in their ways and they do the same things and day in and day out, and you see those things when you're traveling around and you see a bunch of different clinicians, and you not only learn how you do want to practice, but you learn how you don't want to practice,
right.
which is valuable.
Very important. So that's kind of our spiel on just mentorship as a traveling therapist. What questions do you guys have for us? I see there's already been a couple questions asked, so we'll scroll back through and talk about those. But if you guys are tuning in right now, if you came in the middle somewhere, just ask us what questions you have about traveling therapy, especially as a newer clinician, as a student who's going to be, thinking about traveling as a new grad. What questions do you have about mentorship and that sort of thing? We'd be happy to help you and answer any questions that you have. Yeah, I think that's most of what we wanted to go over. Oh, I know one other thing I wanted to talk about, just as far as learning and growing. So like we sort of alluded to, was like seeing different settings and getting to have different experiences. Because some programs, some PT programs or OT or speech, you might only get a limited number of clinicals. Jared had 12-week clinicals?
Yeah, 12 weeks.
And 2 of those were outpatient, and 1 of them was inpatient rehab. So he never got to see SNF. He never got to see home health. I had 5, so I had a little bit more experience, but I also had pretty limited experience in SNF and home health, a little bit more experience in acute. So travel can be an awesome opportunity for you to diversify your skill set and learn new settings and find out what you like more. And you just have to be a little creative in finding this mentorship along the way.
Yeah, I don't think there's any better option for exploring different settings and getting to try new things than travel, for sure.
Yeah. So we got a few people left some comments here. Hi, Tamika. You're a student in Florida and you're graduating in May and boards in July. Congratulations and good luck. Autumn is a second-year PT student. I'm looking into travel PT, and I want to gain some information. Thank you for joining us, Autumn. We hope that we can provide some valuable information for you.
Feel free to reach out with any questions.
Yes, absolutely. Feel free to send us a message. Hi, Isha. Hey, Jeff and Megan. Oh, they are in their last week in their clinical. That's so exciting. So Jeff and Megan will be graduating soon from their PT program and traveling as a pair like us. So that is super awesome. Jill says #mentor. So Jill, I will reach out to you and let you know some of those companies and recruiters that we love that work well with newer therapists that are getting into travel therapy and provide mentorship. So I will message you after this. Hi, Lauren. Thank you for tuning in. Lauren has a question. You want to read it for us?
Just logging in. When you all first started, did you try to get contracts where you were not the only PT so that you could ask questions as needed? And then she said, do you suggest that? So yes, we definitely, when starting out, we didn't want to be the only PTs. Even now, we try to avoid contracts with the only PTs, especially if it's a clinic that has like several PTAs, just because we found that it's really hard to come in and work with several PTAs doing supervisory notes, things like that. You don't know how they practice. You don't know what their treatment techniques are going to be like. You don't know if you agree with them. And not only that, it's really hard to have, so say you don't agree, it's really hard to have conversations with a PTA as a temporary employee. So we try to avoid being the only therapist even now. But yes, we definitely, for new grads,
also in that situation, because sometimes if you're the only PT and you have a lot of PTAs, this happens a lot in SNFs. You're just stuck always only doing the evals, the progress reports, and the discharges, and you don't actually get to do a lot of the treatments, which one is just a drain. Yeah. Two, it's not great patient care because you're not really getting to see the patient through their care, and you're really having to rely just on what the PTA says as far as, well, how is their progress in the past week? I don't know. I've never treated them before. And especially as a new clinician, that is just not a great situation to get into.
And three, the documentation. You have to do a lot of documentation. It makes your productivity look bad. So then you have the manager of the facility like, oh, well, how come you only had whatever % productivity? Well, it's because every single person I see is either a discharge, progress note, or an eval.
Which can take 30, 45 minutes, an hour to write sometimes, especially as a newer clinician who's not even used to writing all those reports. So absolutely, Lauren, I would very much suggest for your first job, if not your first few jobs, trying to make sure you are not the only PT there. At least at minimum, even if that other PT there is busy too and they can't directly mentor you, you can bounce ideas off of them and they're going to be willing to help you. So great question, Lauren. Hi Chelsea, thank you for joining on. Hi Ryan. Ryan's asking about CEUs. Yes, MedBridge is a great opportunity to get CEUs online, and we do have a discount code, Fifth Wheel PT. We love MedBridge. It's a great way to not only get CEUs, but actually, learn a lot along the way, especially like those situations where you see a diagnosis that you don't know. Maybe you can get a little information off that. And then, hi Wanda, thanks for signing on. And then Jess also wants to know about mentorship recruiters. So thank you for tuning on, Jess, and I will send you a message after this.
All right.
So we kind of just wanted to just recap everything we talked about. The big thing right now, if you are a student, just like the students we talked to this weekend at the North Carolina Student Conclave, if you are a student right now, learn as much as you can. Start thinking about how you feel as an independent practitioner. When you're in your last few clinicals, start feeling out how confident you feel, whether you think that travel therapy is the right move for you, or whether you feel like you would feel more comfortable going into more of a permanent job right after school. That's the biggest thing to consider right after school, if it's the best move for you in the beginning of your career. We definitely have no regrets. It was a great decision for us. We would not have done it any other way, but we have heard horror stories where people did not enjoy or did not have a good experience going into travel therapy right after school. So it's up to you, and that's the biggest thing you have to think about right now.
Yeah, and if you do have a bad first experience, we would recommend at least giving it another shot, because sometimes you just get unlucky with travel assignments. We've had a couple that we didn't enjoy, and if you started with one of those that you didn't enjoy, that can completely taint your experience on travel. But they're not all like that. You can find really good places. So
absolutely. And also in regards to that, Ryan, you're so silly.
It's an instant pot right
Ryan's
there.
asking us about our pressure cooker. Cover that up with your body. Anyway, so if you guys, sometimes the other thing that some people end up having bad experiences about travel therapy is they end up having a bad recruiter or a bad experience with a company. Yeah. I know one newer therapist who shall remain nameless, who I talk to on a regular basis, and she unfortunately just got into a really tough situation in her first travel job. She was not supported very well by her recruiter, and it really put a bad taste in her mouth about travel. And she has decided to move into a perm position again and kind of leave travel world alone for now. And I completely understand her position, and I felt very badly for her that she got into this position with a bad recruiter. And then, after that point, when she got into that bad situation, is when she reached out to us Anyway, so the bottom line is think about your options, think about, you know, who you are as a clinician, how successful you're going to feel as a new grad going into a travel situation or going into a permanent job. And if you guys want more information on the companies that we recommend that are going to support you and the recruiters that are going to support you as a new grad and your career goals and provide you that mentorship that you need, please reach out to us or just comment #mentor below and we will send you some of those recommendations. So.
Yeah. So next week it'll probably be Sunday at 8 o'clock again. I don't think we're doing anything, right?
Nope. Sunday at 8 o'clock
Sunday
right
at 8
here.
o'clock, and we'll probably be talking about recruiters. I would say we'll probably talk about like picking a recruiter, travel company, things to ask, those
Yep.
kind of things. So if you guys have any questions about that, any ideas for things we can talk about, let us know. If you have any ideas for future videos, also let us know.
All right, so we appreciate you guys signing on. If you got value out of tonight's video, please like this video, share it, tag a friend. That way they can join in and learn more about travel therapy. I know there's a ton of students out there that might be second years, third years that are contemplating travel therapy. So if you guys have friends or classmates that are contemplating it, please just tag them in this video. That way they can watch on the replay and learn a little bit. So we'd love to hear from you guys. Send us a message if you have questions and have a wonderful night.
Yep, take care.
Bye.